Day 707, Saturday, July 26th. Esther 8. Esther 8 1-17 NKJV. On that day King Ahasuerus gave Queen Esther the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. So the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai, and Esther appointed Mordecai over the house of Haman. Now Esther spoke again to the king, fell down at his feet, and implored him with tears to counteract the evil of Haman the Agagite, and the scheme which he had devised against the Jews. And the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king and said, If it pleases the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seems right to the king, and I am pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to annihilate the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that will come to my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my countrymen? Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, Indeed, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he tried to lay his hand on the Jews. You yourselves write a decree concerning the Jews as you please, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's signet ring. For whatever is written in the king's name, and sealed with the king's signet ring, no one can revoke. So the king's scribes were called at that time, in the 3rd month, which is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day. And it was written, according to all that Mordecai commanded, to the Jews, the satraps, the governors, and the princes of the provinces from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces in all, to every province in its own script, to every people in their own language, and to the Jews in their own script and language. And he wrote in the name of King Ahasuerus, sealed it with the king's signet ring, and sent letters by couriers on horseback, riding on royal horses bred from swift steeds. By these letters the king permitted the Jews who were in every city to gather together and protect their lives, to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the forces of any people or province that would assault them, both little children and women, and to plunder their possessions. On one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. A copy of the document was to be issued as a decree in every province and published for all people, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers who rode on royal horses went out, hastened and pressed on by the king's command. And the decree was issued in Shushan the citadel. So Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, with a great crown of gold and a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness, joy and honor. And in every province and city, wherever the king's command and decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a holiday. Then many of the people of the land became Jews, because fear of the Jews fell upon them. Daily Deep Dive, the UCG reading plan states, the same day as the events of the previous chapter, the king gave Haman's estate to Esther. Esther 8:1. Persian law gave the state the power to confiscate the property of those who had been condemned as criminals. Cf. Herodotus 3.128-29. Note on verse 1. Esther revealed her relation to Mordecai, who was then brought in and given the king's signet ring, making him the prime minister in place of Haman. Mordecai's position is later explained to be second to King Ahasuerus. Esther 10:3. Having just honored Mordecai for saving his life, the king probably saw this man as one he could trust. And Mordecai, being the adoptive father of the queen, was another reason to accord him high status. In a further example of poetic justice, Esther commits Haman's estate to Mordecai, making him very wealthy. Recall that Haman had sought to confiscate the property of the Jewish people. See Esther 3:13. Yet there was still a major problem, which Esther brought to the king. The decree to destroy the Jews was still in effect. As other scriptures show, Persian law could not be altered. See Daniel 6:8, Daniel 6:12, Daniel 6:15. But depending on the wording of a decree, a second decree might be able to effectively invalidate it. This is what the king instructed Esther and Mordecai to draw up in Esther 8:7-8. In verse 9 we see that it was the 3rd month, still leaving almost 9 months until the time set for the Jews' destruction in the first decree, thus allowing ample time to prepare for an attack at that time. Verses 11-12 have led many to reject Esther as an uninspired book. The view is that Esther and Mordecai were evil in calling for such vengeance as to utterly wipe out their enemies, including women and children, when God had not ordered such a thing. Yet that is based on a misreading of these verses. If we carefully compare these verses with Haman's original decree, we can see that the original decree is actually quoted in them, so that the women and children are not those of the enemies but of the Jews. Note the wording of the original decree referred to in Esther 3:13. And the letters were sent by couriers into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions. The counter-order in chapter 8 is to defend against anyone who would try to carry out the wording of the first decree. Notice in Esther 8:11-12 that the Jews were to protect their lives, to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the forces of any people or province that would assault them being the Jews, including both, as the original decree stated, the Jews' little children and women, and who would assault the Jews to plunder their possessions on one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. That this is not talking about the Jews killing the women and children of their enemies and plundering their property in revenge, should be clear from the fact that when the Jews carried out the decree, they killed only men. See Esther 9:6, Esther 9:12, Esther 9:15, and they did not take any plunder. See Esther 9:10, Esther 9:15-16. The point of the new decree, then, was simply for the Jews to defend themselves against those enemies who would seek to cause them harm. However, this probably did include striking preemptively against those who had already shown themselves hostile to the Jews. When the new decree came, the mourning of the Jews was replaced with great rejoicing. Esther 8:16. No doubt news also spread of all that had transpired. This was a cause of great fear of the Jews among the people of the empire. Verse 17. No doubt due to a perceived supernatural favor that must have rested on them. Surprisingly, this sparked mass conversions. See same verse. The phrase became Jews is interesting, as it shows the name Jew as applied not in an ethnic sense, but as denoting one who was part of the Jewish religious community. Motivated by fear of the Jewish people, it seems likely that most of these conversions were not genuine. Many may have merely claimed to be Jews without making any changes in their lives at all. Nevertheless, this all served to increase the acceptance of the Jews in the empire, and it enlarged their numbers to help dissuade would-be attackers. The real point here, though, is to see just how far the tables had turned. The change was so drastic that it was now deemed dangerous to not be a Jew. End.